forum, I call upon Lopa Gandhi from Ugam Education Foundation of India. A little bit biography of Lopa. She has over 25 years experience in the not-for-profit space. She is the founder of Ugam Education Foundation. Ugam works in collaboration with the state government for education and empowerment of marginalized adolescents, girls in Jharkhand. Currently,
Wonderful.
Ugam works across 260 residential girls' schools in Jharkhand. Ugam's work facilitates the development of learning, health and gender, education and voice and agency among girls through local women leaders. Lopa has significant expertise in program, curriculum design, teaching, training, facilitation, and evaluation methods. She has worked in various senior positions with Akansha Foundation, Kaivalya Muktangan, Antara Foundation, Transform Initiative, Catalyst for Social Action, and etc. Please welcome Lopa.
Thank you. Hello and good morning to everyone. Like she already mentioned, my name is Lopa. I come from India, and what I want to speak about is going to be slightly different from probably a lot of the sessions that you have been a part of since yesterday. I am not a doctor and I don't work specifically in gynecology or obstetrics. The words from that title that most relate to what I want to speak about are women, empowerment, and health. And I would urge you, I'm assuming a lot of you are from the medical fraternity, I urge you to also think about health, not so much from the clinical and lens, but more from a social and community lens, because that intersection is where we partly work. So let me speak about the work we do and also then connect where health and wellness intersect with adolescent girls and young women, particularly from marginalized, vulnerable communities in remote locations. I speak about India, but certainly this is not the reality of only India. This is the reality of several countries, unfortunately. I know there's a question answer time for later, but if you feel, I mean, we are a very small group, so if you feel you want me to say something, repeat, ask questions, please, you can just interrupt and ask. I will not get disturbed with my flow or anything of that sort, right? So Ugam, the organization that I founded, we just completed 10 years of this organization. We work primarily in the space of educating and empowering every girl. And as you would realize, and as we realized when we met with these girls in the field, empowerment and health cannot be separated. The basic fundamental aspects of health are linked to empowerment in many, many ways, whether it's access to information, whether it's attitudes to wellness and self-care, and whether it's skills of self-care and family and community care. So in some ways, I see the link, and in some ways, you may find it slightly different, right? So I'm going to try and see if this works. Okay. Okay. So I want to start with the story of two young women. Meet Hiramuni. Of course, the names have been changed. She's this girl on the picture is not Hiramuni in the interest of privacy. She belongs to a rural community from one of the indigenous tribal groups that exist in Jharkhand and across India, but particularly Jharkhand is a state in the eastern part of India. So she belongs to one such community, is probably the first girl child to go to school from her family or even her community. With thanks to the government's efforts, she is most likely to attend primary school because that school would be very accessible in the village or in the hamlet that she lives in. She may not complete up till grade 12. That is, she may not complete 12 years of schooling because the higher or the secondary schools do come up at a distance from the place of residence, and their commute is a problem in very remote rural areas. She is unlikely to engage in a work of her choice, and we'll come to why it is so, as well as unlikely to see many role models. And meet Roshni. In many ways, the photographs do tell their stories. This was Hiramani, and of course, the photo was taken at the time of COVID, but the mask on her face is literal and metaphorical both. So while COVID has literally gone away, thank God, from our lives, the metaphorical masks continue to remain for many, many girls and women. So this is one photo and this is the other one. And like I said, a picture says 1,000 words. The photos say a story of their own. The Roshni comes similarly from a remote rural village, probably has also completed her primary schooling, but she is likely to complete grade 12 and go on to complete her post-graduation. She is engaged in a work of her choice. She travels independently, and she, in fact, is a role model to other girls and other communities around her. So what is the difference between the two, right? Both come from the similar backgrounds, not same, but very similar backgrounds. Both have had perhaps similar life experiences as they grew up as young girls. But the future or present of one looks very different from the potential future and present of the other. We believe one is more empowered than the other, and we believe nobody is completely empowered. Empowerment is an immersive journey, and each one of us, even in this room, are on that journey at some place on that journey, right? So we come to, what do girls need to feel empowered, to be empowered? What is it that the girls need? Definitely access to secondary schooling. That's a big plus. They need access to schools because we all now know nobody needs convincing that good health and good education are necessities, right? I mean, definitely not in this room, not in most rooms wherever I go and speak. They also, in addition to schooling, they also need exposure to wellness behaviors. These are going to be aspects of promotive, preventive healthcare in many ways as well, right? They need grade level authentic learning outcomes. They need empowerment programs which will allow them to develop a voice and expression. And ultimately, to do this at scale, because we are dealing with large countries, India is very large, so is Indonesia. So large countries will need systems that will deliver these outcomes, because at an individual level, whether it's individually LOPA or individual organizations, we can only go that far, right? We need government systems, large-scale systems to be able to deliver these. Why should we empower girls in the first place, right? I mean, very often I hear the argument, not often, but sometimes I hear the argument that, well, the world is going on, so what is the problem, right? We need to empower girls because empowering girls and women are going to not just help us achieve one United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, but at least 5, if not more, right? And that is the reason. More than ample research has indicated that every additional year of education for a woman or a girl leads to many, many economic, social, health, wellness, and personal gains and benefits. Going back to the story of Hiramani and Roshni, right? We believe that the difference that we find in the outcomes that the two of them have had has to do with the power of youth leadership, youth women's leadership in particular, right? What is it that created the schools the government has provided, but beyond the schools, the qualitative, nurturing, empowering aspects? Our model has relied on youth women as leaders, Why should a youth woman become a leader or come in a leadership role? Primarily because that's sustainable, that's local, that is going to empower not just that woman, but that entire community, whether it's her family, her neighbors, her well-wishers, and people at large in the community. And where do they facilitate this change? And I'm going to talk about the young women leaders in a bit, which will kind of connect all the different aspects of the story, right? Uh, these young women leaders facilitate this change at the level of many schools, many community groups, many primary schools, and preschool centers, which are called Anganwadis in India, right? We spoke about schools. We are talking about a particular type of a school called Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya. Forget the name, it's a mouthful. But what it essentially is a residential school that's run by the government of India. These are residential, these are meant only for girls, and these start from grade 6 and go on till grade 12. Why grade 6 and not before? Again, y'all are all doctors, you know it's for young children, the best place to be with is their mother and their families. So till the child is in completing grade 5, they stay at home, they attend the very, very accessible local village school. And post grade 5, when the girl, in this case the girls, are slightly older, they go to these residential schools. Why should they go to these residential schools? Oftentimes, primary schools are, so as for example, for 100 primary schools, we may have 75 middle schools and maybe 60 high schools. So you can understand that there is a certain kind of a pyramiding effect that takes place, which means that for some girls, the distance from their home to a middle and secondary school may increase vis-a-vis a primary school, right? And to facilitate that, to overcome that barrier of distance, uh, the government has opened residential schools, so the girls don't have to commute daily, because a daily commute has many challenges in a rural setup, right? I know of girls who will say, in Hindi, who will say, "Mere ghar ke schools ke raste mein jungle." There is a forest patch of forest between the school and my home, or there is a stream which gets very full and fast during monsoons, and I can't cross that stream to reach the school. Apart from other risks, in winters, days are shorter. By the time the girls have to walk back, it gets dark. Maybe the small path they walk on is not well lit, etc., etc. So the government has opened these schools across India uh, to support and ensure access of secondary school to girls. And it's a great initiative. It's been received very well. The state we work in, Jharkhand itself, has close to 204 such schools. Right? They provide a safe, inclusive space for learning and personal growth. So these schools are the spaces where our youth women leaders go and facilitate some conversations. What are those conversations? We'll come to. Okay, so what is it that this youth leader does, right? Uh, we run a 2-year fellowship to develop these young women as leaders. So they engage with us for a 24-month very immersive experience. In those 24 months, there are forum trainings. There is a lot of field level learning and training. During these 24 months, they lead the change and facilitate change on the ground in these KGBV schools that I just spoke about, in community groups, in primary school institutions, etc. Through this entire process, they pick up many, many leadership skills and attitudes, right? So attitudes and important skills like managing stakeholders, building rapport, communicating, because ultimately to facilitate with the girls, you need to talk to the school's principals, you need to convince the teachers, you need to convince education officers of the district, etc. So they pick up a lot of these schools, they become self-aware, they learn critical questioning, critical thinking, and a whole load of other things, right? That for us is the journey of their empowerment as they go through this process of over 24 months. They learn to travel independently, they negotiate with families, because ultimately, who is the villain in this story? If the heroines are these young women leaders, who is the most stories have some negative person, influence, circumstance, right? For us, those villains or those barriers to their empowerment are patriarchy, gender norms, cultural practices, and many such things which become barriers particularly for women and particularly for adolescent women as they are growing up, whether it's early marriage, whether it's poor health outcomes and attitudes and a whole lot of other things. Hmm. This is a one slide about Ugam. We started 10 years ago. We currently work across the whole of Jharkhand and reach to more than 75,000 girl students. And by girl students, I mean adolescents, so grade 6 and upwards, up to grade 12. And we work with more than 100 youth leaders. These are women who are 18 to maybe 25-year-olds coming from the same community. In fact, our women leaders are alumni of these very same schools. So it brings a lot of uh, relatability for the existing students. It brings a multilinguality because Jharkhand is a multilingual state. It's English is, of course, I'm not even talking about English as a language of instruction, but even Hindi, very many girls are unable to follow because they speak their local tribal languages and dialects. The youth leader, because they come from the same background or similar backgrounds, are able to overcome challenges of language as well. So how do we define empowerment? We've been using the word very often, almost with every slide. So how do we define empowerment? For us, empowerment is defined as these three pillars: education, and by Shakti we mean power, but power from a lens of health and wellness, and ability to express, voice, and develop agency. We call it in Hindi Shiksha, Shakti, and Abhivyakti. What does learning involve? What are finally, we've spoken about schools, we've spoken about the need, we've spoken about youth leaders. Finally, what gets translated in community groups or in schools, right? That we spoke about. Under our learning or education vertical of empowerment, we teach them Hindi and English, which is, we call it remedial. Remedial as in when the girls, there are reasons sometimes where girls have had to drop out of school and they rejoin these schools because these are residential, particularly in the post-COVID era. Almost every school in the world has undergone learning loss because of shutdown that happened over many months. So we teach them a bridge program where you bridge the gap from, if she's aware her learning outcomes are of a grade level 4 and she comes to grade level 6, somebody has to bridge that gap of the 2 years of learning. So we bridge that gap. We re-energize the school libraries because we believe library to be a very, very critical component for learning in a school. And we do engage in training of their teachers. Under Shakti, and this you may find more relatable, we talk about health and gender and wellness. So because again, these are sixth graders when they come in. So the first thing we discuss and talk about with them is menstrual hygiene and changes during adolescence. And from a medical perspective, of course, menstruation may seem like a very, very routine thing, not non-crisis thing. But for many of my girls, when they start menstruating for the very first time, to them, it does seem like a crisis. You believe me not, there are girls who have thought, I'm dying, I'm going to bleed to death, and they don't know how to tackle it. They are deeply, deeply scared and they feel deeply embarrassed to share this with anyone. And a big part of this is lack of information, lack of awareness, and lack of any role model. Nobody, they don't find people around them. They are away from home. Even at home, if they were to tell their mother, not necessarily the mother will give them correct information. Not necessary. She may, but she may not is also a possibility. So for them, it's a big crisis. It's something to be embarrassed about because in the village, at home, families, they've heard these topics being talked in a very hush-hush manner. You don't talk about this in front of the men. You only whisper about this if at all. You hide it. So there is a whole culture of silence around menstruation for a lot of the girls that we work with. And therefore, it becomes a crisis point, and that's why knowledge and information around this is important for them. So we talk about changes in adolescence and menstrual, because also one of the big things sociologically that happens with menstruation and the start of menstruation is an extreme narrowing of these girls' freedom and options, right? Suddenly you started menstruating, you are being told, don't go mix with the boys, don't talk to the boys, don't play with them, or be slightly coy, you are now a grown-up girl, etc., etc., etc. So for anyone, I mean, imagine you are 13, right? For anyone to make sense of what is happening to me, it is a tough ask at that young age. And therefore, when we talk to these girls about this, that and about this and say that this is very normal. They've had questions like, do boys menstruate? So I'm narrating the question simply to indicate um, the lack of information that most of these girls face, right? Um, Along with this, and the photograph you can see, they are drawing female reproductive organs, and I mean, this is for them a great empowering moment because something which was so hush hush, now I can draw it on the blackboard of my classroom and talk about it, right? And uh, sitting where we are sitting right now in Bali in an air conditioned room, it doesn't seem like much. But honestly, if I was there in that village, in that school, having lived the life that many of my girls have lived, it would seem like a lot. It is truly liberating and empowering for a lot of them. They are able to raise hands and ask questions which they never knew whom to ask. Okay? Along with this, so menstruation has become not just a medical issue or a physiological issue. It's economics, it's sociology, it's psychology, it's a lot of other things, right? Uh, so sociologically, one of the big challenges with menstruation, and I'm elaborating on this slide because I realized yesterday that this is going to be probably the most relevant thing you will hear. Uh, the other big portion that we tackle with attitudinally is the myths that surround menstruation. And it's unbelievable the amount of myths that surround menstruation. Girls have grown up hearing this, and girls have imbibed it. And therefore, for us to overcome these attitudinal belief systems is a tough ask. It helps that youth leaders who are young women who are able to tell them, oh, like you, I used to sit on that bench and desk 7 years ago. Oh, like you, my mother too never told me about this. Oh, like you, my father didn't speak to me about this. And suddenly that's relatable. So we've had to do demonstrations. So example, one myth like this is, if a girl has her period touches a plant, the plant will die. Right? Now, it's laughable if you're sitting here. It's not laughable if you're in the field over there. Right? And so we've had to say, okay, fair. Generally, our facilitation style is we don't go into a combative denial because that more often creates barriers rather than overcoming barriers. So we say, oh, great, maybe at least in my house, the plants haven't died, but let's try it. So we tell them, okay, it's a residential school. In the campus, identify a plant, right? And if you have a class of 40, 50, one girl on any given day, at least one girl is menstruating. So we say, okay, why don't you go hug the plant? And then you all observe this plant over the next 2 months. Let's see if it dies or if it doesn't die, right? So we do that, and of course the plant doesn't die, and then that's when the penny drops and say, oh, okay. We tell them, okay, have you seen, we use the Hindi films a lot. So we say, have you seen these Hindi films? You think women abroad menstruate? Oh, okay, yeah. So then do you think even they don't touch plants? Because then the forest would have died long ago, not so climatologists say it's too fast, but we tell them not so slow. We would have got rid of a forest many years ago. So these are the way the attitudinal challenges, and that's also a way to teach them critical thinking, right? The other big piece we talk about is gender awareness, critical thinking. We also include anemia in this discussion because anemia is the other big one that is very, very rampant. Um, Mild anemia is really rampant, severe anemia, mercifully not so rampant. But we again talk about that, and it's not that the government is making a lot of efforts. Iron and folic acid tablets are given to these girls in the school, provided by the government. But like the girls demonstrated to us, I mean, that's the other advantage of young women leaders who are alumni of these schools, because they give you the insights which you don't have access to. So they would say, oh ma'am, they give us the tablet, we do this, and then we do this. So the girls are not taking the iron folic acid tablets primarily because very often iron tablet ingestion may cause some nausea, some constipation, some stomach ache, and in their heads they think this is medicine, and in their heads they think medicine is for people who are sick. I am not sick, so why should I take this? So we've had to work around that whole piece and talk to them about anemia and stuff like that. Lastly, the other third big piece we work on under the Shakti title is around mental wellness and socio-emotional well-being. These are young girls for the first time in their life. They've left their families, come and started living in a new place. The language here is different. The food here may be different. The discipline, timetable for the day may be different. It's very obvious the girls are going through some level of socio-emotional. And see, these are residential schools. These are hostels. Um, what happens in many hostels in the world is likely to happen here. There will be some older girls dominating the younger girls sometimes. Those kind of things do happen. I'm not saying that's all right, but I'm saying they do happen. That's the reality. And they need a lot of mental wellness and socio-emotional learning. And we work around that, including yesterday, Rani spoke about power literacy. We talk about emotional literacy. Girls don't have language to express the emotion they are feeling. If you ask them name some emotions, usually it stops at happy, sad, and if you give a little nudge, then maybe anger. But the whole load of emotions that each human being experiences, they don't have the language for it. So kind of working a lot on emotional literacy and mental wellness. We also have cases of adolescent depression, anxiety, stress. Many of the girls have also had some traumatic experience prior to coming to the school, whether it's loss of a parent, sometimes loss of both parents, sometimes both parents are working and they are migrant laborers, so the girl is living with maybe grandparents and the parents are working elsewhere, and that itself, so there is some levels of trauma that happens, and of course life skills. Under developing voice and agency, it's more approach issue. So we use a lot of songs and stories. We have found stories to be tremendously wonderful vehicles to talk about any topic, right? Rather than have a PowerPoint presentation. If I were to start with a story, it just very quickly engages them, makes it lucid to understand, etc. We do a lot of school assembly and student parliament, energizing the student parliament as well. So in our holistic approach to girls' empowerment, we work at the preschool level with pregnant women, lactating women, adolescent girls in the communities. We work in the primary schools and we work in the secondary schools. And post-secondary schools, we offer the 2-year fellowship for developing these young women as leaders. On the menstrual hygiene and the gender aspects, mental wellness aspects, we do have a lot of baseline and endline data, which I have not got here because it's just very internal. But I am happy to talk about it with any one of you if that interests you. These are our goals, so I'm just going to rush through the slide. But one piece which may interest the group here is we are looking to partner for research and knowledge creation. Even things like what would be the self-esteem score of rural marginalized adolescent girls is not a very easily available data point. And we can look at that. We have access to large numbers and we are happy to partner on that front. These are just some photos. These are some of our community groups. Just, I can't take you to Jharkhand, but just to bring Jharkhand here for 45 seconds. These are our community groups. These are our Anganwadi, the preschool training that happens. And the girl standing in the middle is the young woman leader, and she's facilitating a session there. These are our girls in the schools, and this is their graduation ceremony. This one, this photo here. What can you do? Our call to action. Most happy to join us, fund us, connect us with potential funders you know. If you are part of universities or hospitals, you have young people who are interested in some research like that, happy to host them if that research needs to be based in India, in case you think that helps, and support the research and advocacy. And yes, thank you. That's the first one, this one. This is the local tribal language called Santali. The second one is Hindi, and of course, you know the last one. So yes, thank you very much, and happy to be part of this. If you have questions, please feel free to answer. Yes, thank you. Oh, exactly on time.
Thank you so much, Lopa, for such an insightful presentations. I now take this immense pleasure of inviting Indian Karen to felicitate Lopa Gandhi with a keynote certificate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, William.